Philip Morris is well known for its brands such as Marlboro and Chesterfield. I know. But it's basically, its stated mission now is to completely move away from the cigarette space and replace all of its business relying on cigarette with a smoke-free product. In terms of all of our products, so both conventional and reduced risk, we're in 170 markets over the world. When I mentioned our kind of R&D center, it's not just lip service. We've got over 1,000 scientists, engineers, and technicians working on smoke-free products. We really had a fragmented knowledge management process, and across dozens of markets, dozens of languages, there wasn't any end-to-end coherence in how this kind of governance was taking place.
Why eGain? Well, we need it to be able to fit in with all of our existing solutions that we have. Salesforce, I'm sure many will be familiar with. This is really where our frontline agents are ultimately servicing our agents or servicing our customers. And from that perspective, we need to have knowledge right there when we need it. And this kind of just gives you a glimpse of how it is actually empowering a fair few parts. We have all the inputs coming in. We've got eGain ultimately becoming your core pillar for knowledge. And then you've got all the other items I've kind of mentioned earlier, certainly around call center where Salesforce sits in, enabling our in-house agentic capabilities. I think one of the main benefits that we got from eGain ultimately was really moving away from the previous approach where we had an article being created and ultimately being replicated across all the existing markets that we have. And some of those articles weren't really relevant for the market. So with that, with having an actual workflow in place, we were able to really control that significantly. Governance and compliance, as you can imagine, legal, governance, compliance, all of these things, and certainly in our line of business, is absolutely key. So we used to have Salesforce knowledge before, and from that perspective, legal didn't want to use Salesforce. They're like, well, we're lawyers, we don't really want to be in Salesforce, I just want it in a Word document. So this is really where eGain shone through, because we're able to really get them into a standalone platform. It's fine, you don't have to use Salesforce. You can just do it through the eGain portal. So this really allowed us to streamline a lot of that and remove a lot of the time that's wasted between back and forth and have those checks, have those workflow places in place as well. I think one thing I will say is from the moment we signed the contract with eGain, we were live with 3 markets within 6 months. So, and there were a few of our biggest markets that we went live with. But most importantly, the other element here is integrating knowledge. So here what we actually did was we used the eGain Solve app within Salesforce, and that's what we went live with all of our agents, because it was the agents that were first that we wanted to focus on before we then started looking at the additional self-service capabilities.
So we've moved on to our knowledge on web implementation. So again, markets were either using like static websites where someone was going onto the local CMS and saying, right, well, we have a lot of contact around where's my order, so let's fix that. And then some people were making efforts to integrate with Salesforce knowledge. eGain will now be our consistent go-to in terms of this dynamic FAQs proposition for offering to our customer. In our relationship with eGain in this space, we're using direct AI products from eGain, but we had quite a specific use case where we were building an in-house agentic conversational AI, but we obviously needed eGain to expose our data back to us in the form of like a initial knowledge layer, and then that would need to kind of talk to MuleSoft and all of that stuff. So we went live with our first market earlier in the year, and this was using this hybrid model where we were using eGain's knowledge layer. That was, we had all of our harmonized knowledge with enriched metadata in one place, and then it was talking to a middle layer, and then PMI had its own thing where we were calling all of these. The product team at eGain have been super helpful in making this happen in a more automated sense. And it's quite exciting so far because, again, it's put knowledge management into the center of the picture where it should be. It's not just a nice afterthought in the random call center routine. It really shows the kind of the value in having everything centralized in one place. We're all familiar with the benefits of using a proper knowledge management tool, and obviously eGain's been helping countless clients here to achieve that. So with a single source of truth, you have CX improvements. And then in terms of our blended cost per interaction, before, when everything was highly manual, we had a lot of inbound traffic to our call centers. The blended cost was actually $10 per interaction, which is huge. We have managed to reduce that over the last couple of years, and eGain in the proper KM routine has been instrumental in this, down to 15 cents blended cost per interaction.